Discuss. Yes. Okay. Last week we have met with you guys and we make a quick introduction to sustainability. Today we will go on these topics. Introduction to sustainability. What does that mean? Why does it matter for us? So let's start with today's topics. We will be seeing today the definitions of environment, policy, scale, and jurisdiction. Sorry. So we will define sustainable development and we will talk about the interdisciplinarity of it. Okay. So there are some key concepts in sustainability, and we will be talking about this today. Yeah. So what is environment? Yeah. Starting with the definition of environment. So it says that in the dictionaries, environment is the circumstances, objects, or conditions by which one is surrounded, right? The things surround us. And when we say environment, we generally first think of the natural environment, right? The forests, the seas, the air, and the place that we live. I mean, that we depend on living. So environment also has a business meaning as well. What do I mean by that? Environment in an environment that business operates, okay, businesses they get interact with each other, right? But they interact also not only with businesses, also with other people, also with governments, also with some natural resources, natural environment, sometimes animals, sometimes uh, any creatures living in the world, right? So environment definition is also exists in sorry in business context as well. Okay, so the another definition of it is the complex physical, chemical, and biotic factors, right? Like climate, soil, and other living things that's living around us, the ecological community of us. We talk about that environment. And in sustainability, when we say environment, we talk about this natural environment mostly. Because the other kind of environment, I mean, the external environment, like other businesses, other consumers, suppliers, these are also called the actors in the environment. But we mostly here talk about the natural environment, physical environment that we live on, our earth, right? Our nature. Um, so, in three ways, the environment affects us, right? We use the material that the environment provides us to produce something. I mean, every company, every business needs some raw materials to produce their products, right? So they are actually getting them from the environment. We need energy to live as organisms, right? We need carbohydrates to eat, to create some energy and to continue our daily lives, right? Like this, businesses consume energy, right, to produce their products, produce their services. Therefore, the environmental impacts of these are very crucial on the environment. I mean, we use some kind of materials, some raw materials. We use some energy that we take it from the earth. But how do we use them, right? Uh, and the information also comes from the environment, the external environment. Everything is there are some knowledge out there, and you take it from there. So these are the fundamental spheres of influence for sustainability, right? So a business is using the raw materials taken from nature. A business is using the energy. You know, the energy sources are like uh, fuel oils, right? Oils or natural gas or coals. These kind of energy sources are used mostly by people, but they have an impact, negative impact on the environment, right? These kind of natural resources, oil-based resources, or coals. So nowadays, people try to find new energy sources like solar energy system, wind energy system, which are more environmental friendly, which are more green. These are all important things for sustainability. And a policy. What's a policy? A policy is a course of general plan and action adopted by a government, by a business, by a person. Okay. So our policy actually matters here. I mean, this course is one of the main purposes is that to change the policies of the governments, to change the policies of businesses, to change the policies of people in their everyday life. What do I mean by that? We talk about UNDP development goals. We will talk about it again at the end of the lecture. And you see that there are some goals, there are some objectives which are provided by United Nations to all over the world, to all governments, to all businesses. They call for them. They actually some kind of beg for them to contribute to these sustainable goals because we need these kind of policies. So a policy is a plan, policy is a strategy, policy is a way of thinking, way of doing your things, your everyday activity as governments, as businesses. So if you do not respect the natural environment, if you do not respect the society, if you just focus on your own gain, if you just focus on making profits, so you may have create you may create very huge damages on the earth, right? Which in the end would cost our lives, would cost the animals' lives, would maybe create some catastrophes in the near future. So policies are important here. Yes, we talk about this. Conceptual tools for understanding sustainability. What are those? Now we will be talking about these things. What do they mean? Let's look at them. So for what's a scale? Scale is by definition all the series of graduated quantities, values, degrees. I mean a scale is something about quantity, right? It's the values of something. You measure something, and we call it scale. And the scale may be in our context, right? It could be a physical scale, a geographical scale, I mean, an ecological scale. So, and also a jurisdiction scale. What do you mean by that? I mean, the scale of our impact. This is the important thing. I mean, how a business have an impact on the environment, and what is the scale of it? What is the geographical impact of a business, for example? What is the ecological impact of a business? And what is its scale, right? So, as you see here, our scale could be go from the micro to the macro, from local to the global, right? For example, you may have an impact on the individuals by just doing your thing, doing your activity, doing your business, anything. Or you may have an impact to households and your neighborhood, your municipality, your region, province, country, continent, and earth. So these are all, I mean, a company may have an impact to all of these elements in all of the scales. So while we are developing some sustainability, arkadaşlar galiba koptum. Şu an duyuyor musunuz sesimi? Can you hear me now, guys? I think I have...
Evet hocam, duyuyoruz.
Tamam. I am disconnected. Sorry for that. Let me share again. Okay. So what was we saying? We said that while we are developing some policies, while we are developing some plans, we should consider these different scales, right? What is our impact on individuals? What is our impact on households, neighborhoods, municipality, region, province, country? So there are different impacts on that. And also there is another part of it, the institutional part of it, right? At the individual level, we have an impact to the environment. We should consider this. At the community level, at the business level, at the NGO level, at the governmental level, and at the United Nations level. So these are our scales while we're talking about sustainability. So what is jurisdiction? This means that the legal power, the authority of making big decisions. Okay. For example, every day, I mean, you hear about news that okay, you should use the water wisely, right? Don't waste the water, don't waste the electricity, don't waste the sources that you use in the households, right? But the total usage of individuals, total water usage of individuals is only 11% in all over the world. 90% of the water is used by big companies, big factories, big corporations. I mean, even if you have decreased your water consumption 50%, okay, you just use very wisely that you don't waste any water, it's very good. Even if you just cut it 50%, I mean, it does not depend on you to protect the water resources, because 90%, almost 90% of the natural water resources is consumed by the companies, consumed by corporations. So they are the ones whose decision is more impactful on the environment. And another example, for instance, a government could say that I don't let any, let's say, factories who will damage, who create damage on the atmosphere. I don't let them operate. Okay, so it's a big decision, right? And when they do that, they have a provided protection to their environment, protection to the health of the people, health of the nature, right? However, there are some problems in these kind of authority issues, because sometimes companies are so powerful that they can create some pressure on the governments on not taking some precautionary actions, because they will lose some money, they will lose their operations, they need to maybe quit their jobs, right? Um, and another issue here is that the economical aspect. So governments want to provide employment opportunities to their people, right? Unemployment is a big problem in Turkey right now. So think about a factory. There are maybe 10,000 people working in there, making their livings. And you say that I need to shut down this factory because they don't respect the nature. They don't provide uh, green energy. They just consume a lot of uh, carbons, and they pollute the air, they pollute the water, they pollute the forests. So you should actually ban them from uh, engaging, continuing their activities. However, sometimes a political question. You don't want to lose that jobs, right? People need that jobs. So what would you do? So here, in that sense, authority, the legal authority, is very important by taking necessary actions uh, to protect our nature, to protect our world. So what is sustainable development then? I mean, there's a development, right? So let's say that a company or an economy is growing. Okay? A Turkish economy is growing 5%, 10%, 20%, whatever. So the development is generally understood by economically, right? I mean, last year I have 10 billion US dollars in economy, and this year I have 1,200 billion dollars. Okay, so it's a growth, it's a development. However, a development should not be only measured by economic measures. This is what we call. Okay, this is what we say. Uh, Sustainable development say actually. So they say that a development should be sustainable, meaning that we need to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So while I am spending the natural resources today, I should think my grandsons. Okay? Because we treat the environment like there is unlimited resources in the world that we can use, like forests, like minerals, like animals, I mean, that we eat every day, and plants, soil, oil, I mean, everything that we use, we think that they are unlimited and they will be there all over all over the future. However, when we think about the risks of the global warming, the pollutions, air pollutions, water pollutions, oil, soil pollutions, right? So these kind of things actually reminds us that if we continue consuming like that, if you continue producing like that, I mean, in the near future, we will have really serious problems about our world. Our world will become a place that people and other creatures cannot live. So what is the elements of sustainability? Actually, there are three elements. There are different names of it. We call it triple bottom line, three E's, the elements of sustainability. But the main idea is here, economy. I mean, it's the basic of business, right? So we cannot say that businesses should not profit, make profits. Businesses should not gain money. I mean, it is the main idea of making a business, making profits. Okay. But then we should respect the natural environment, we should respect the society. Okay. This is environment. So what do we mean by environment? We talk about biodiversity. I mean, the creatures living in the world, like animals, plants, anything that living under the water or on the lands, right? Materials that we use, energy consumption, and biophysical interactions. By economy, we talk about money, capital, employment, technological growth, investment, and market forces. They should be also sustainable, right? We should not consume all of it. We should provide people to have jobs. We should provide people with employment so that they have a quality of living. And society. So diversity is matters here in terms of cultural, ethnic, religions, diversity, equity, I mean dependence, independence, quality of life, institutional structures, political structure, justice, well-being, right? Equality in the society. These are all elements of sustainability. So actually, what we say here, guys, is that businesses is just more than businesses, right? Business is just more than making profits. Business is just more than making revenues. Businesses is just more than making billionaires, I mean, getting rich, everything. There are three E's, similar to the other one, economy, ecology, and equity, okay? So we create a model that respects to the health of the society, health of the environment, and health of the economy altogether. This is what we call sustainable development, guys. Okay. Any questions up to now? Anything that you think not clear for you up to now about sustainability? Okay. Okay. Let me continue then. Yes. So, what are some problems about sustainability today? Actually, I mentioned a few of them, but let's have a quick look. So, depletion of finite resources, fuels, soil, minerals, species. These are finite, these are limited, but we treat them, they are unlimited. They are always, they were there, and they were always or will be there, right? Like water resources. Overuse of renewable resources like forest, fish, wildlife, fertility, public funds. I mean, you use them over, and you maybe make distinct some of them and extinct. I mean, some of the resources become extinct, right? Pollution, inequity in terms of society, social way, and some species are losses. The animals, the plants, where many species are lost because of our capitalistic understanding of living. What are the solutions then? We will be talking about this in our lecture through the semester. So, cyclical material use. So, emulate natural cycles. So, recycling actually, I mean, using resources again and again. Don't limiting the usage of plastic resources, for example, using the glass related resources more. Safe and reliable energy. I mean, renewable energies like solar energy, wind energy, which are less impactful on the nature, and life-based interests like giving importance to the society's health, their communication, their coordination, learning, spiritual development, this kind of issues. There are two key sustainable development concepts here I want to mention. Lastly, arkadaşlar sesinizi kısalım. Tamam. One is equity, the other one limits growth. So equity is the concept of needs, particularly the essential needs of those poor people. Okay, we call it equity. It's like providing them the opportunities, providing them the basic needs that they need to have, right? People, all the people should have reach from basic needs, like the quality of being fair or impartial, fairness, impartiality, something that is fair and just. Here, we make sometimes contrast with equity, with equality. Equality is meaning the quality of being equal. So in terms of quantity, degree, value, rank, and ability, so uniform character is of motion or surface. But equity is something different. I mean, I think this picture is defining it, expressing it very well. So at the first picture, you see that everyone have the same support from the, let's say, governments. But this quality is equal treatment. However, not every time we have a required solution to the problems, right? When we treat all people equally, because some people have different needs, some people have different expectations from us. So equity means that everyone gets the support they need. So look at the second picture. Now the guy, the children here, the child here, get the support, get more support. Maybe not they don't have equal support maybe, but they have the support they need. So all of them can see the game, right? So we call it equity. And justice is just diminishing that wall which prevents them seeing the match, right? Seeing the game. So these are the concepts. I mean, these are the concepts that I put these pictures for you to better understand what they mean. So these are also issue of sustainable development. These are also issue of businesses, right? So, for example, there are many businesses work for the children who don't have access to education, who don't have access to the nutrition, to food, and they support them. They provide them opportunity. They provide them grants to scholarships for education, for example, right? So they do that actually to create a equity, a justice environment, right? To contribute their society's development, not keeping all for themselves, but sharing their gains with other people. Okay? So the main idea here is we should limit something, guys. Okay, we should limit business operations in terms of their ecological limits, technological limits, and social limits. If we don't put limit to the growth, there are problems. What kind of problems? First of all, ecological problems. I mean, if you don't limit, for example, fishers to fish, I mean, you know that there are some fishing time zones, right? For example, government law does not let fishers to fish between some periods because in these periods, fish need to generate, fish needs to, they need to, how can I say in English? They need to have baby fish. So the government protects them. I mean, our government protects the nature there. So they put a limit to the businesses there. Similarly, think of all other resources like forest resources, oil resources, water resources. You just put a limit to them for agriculture. And also technological limits and social limits. For example, the biggest issue nowadays in the social media issue, right? The social media, WhatsApp, for example, Instagram, they are so big that and they use our data without our permission, right? So there should be some limit to their activities. I mean, they are selling our information to the companies. They are selling our information to other countries. So what could be the limit here, right? So the limit to the growth Limit to the businesses is another key sustainable development concept. So, sustainable development implies limits, not predefined absolute limits, but limitations imposed by the ability of the biosphere to absorb the effect of human activities, the adaptability of human social and political organization, and adapted the limits of technology. So, there are some uh, carbon emission limits for businesses, for example. According to the Paris Agreement, every country agreed on that, almost every country. So they say that, okay, a company, a factory should not pollute the air exceeding some limits, okay? So by this way, they want to decrease the uh, impact of factories on the pollution, okay? This is the idea. So what we want here, we want the economic growth must be made less material intensive, using less material, having having bigger economic growth, less energy intensive, and more uh, equitable in its impacts, in the impact of society. Yes, actually, two major gaps here impeding the sustainable development. First one is fragmented decision making, so narrow mandate, jurisdictional rigidity, lack of communication and coordination. So many countries, many companies, many governments do not give much importance to these kind of issues, and lack of accountability. Mm, In some cases, businesses do not uh, make accounts to anyone. So they do their jobs, but no one is monitoring them, no one is controlling them. So there should be monitoring, there should be somewhere for businesses to account for. Okay, stop here. We will be continuing to the issues next week.